Well, welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Mindset. Here we are once again, and it's always fun to be here. I love interviewing and conversing more than interviewing with lots of different people. And today we have Sharon Carne as our guest, who is the founder of Sound Wellness and one of the co-founders of the Sound Wellness Institute. She's going to tell us more about that. She's going to talk about things I've known for a while, that is the truth of how sound can affect us and does affect us. But she's going to be the one to talk about that because she's the expert, of course. So anyway, we will get to that. But I want to first welcome you, Sharon. Thank you for joining us here on Unstoppable Mindset.
Thank you so much, Michael. What a delight to be here and to be able to share a little bit about sound.
Well, that is, of course, a lot of what podcasts are all about, and hopefully we can make it all sound reasonably decent, as it were. But why don't we start maybe by you telling us about kind of the early Sharon growing up and some of those kinds of things to sort of set the stage for what we're going to do later.
Oh my goodness. I've had music in my life all my life, as long as I can remember, Michael. And it probably from my mom singing. We used to, my dad was in the armed forces here in Canada, a radar technician. So we traveled long distances in the summer to go visit family, and mom would sing all the way across the country, and we had our favorite songs. And then that led to singing in choirs, singing in church choirs, school choirs, as long as I can remember.
Oh.
One day when I was, or at Christmas time, when I was 16 years old, there was a guitar under the Christmas tree. And from having grown up mostly singing, playing a little bit of recorder, the guitar was such a fun thing. Oh my gosh. We were so lucky. We had a guitar teacher half a block away. And so I signed up for lessons right away. He just happened to be a classical guitar teacher. And so he started me on that and inspired me with every single lesson with playing recordings of some of the masters on classical guitar. And I just fell in love with it, totally fell in love with it. And it's interesting how sometimes you drop something as you get focused on something else. When I went off to university, and it came back in a big way later.
I know exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about. We moved to California when I was 5, and it was the first trip I really remember, although I think we probably did some driving around before then. But my dad liked to sing, and he was a fan of old country and Western songs. I mean, we're talking about back in the country Western days of 40s and 50s and so on. And he even yodeled a little bit. So he sang a lot, and we got to enjoy that, and always loved it when, as he was driving, he would sing. And then he also did have a guitar. He had an old Martin Grand Concert guitar from 1940. He got it by trading something for it, and I actually still have it. But he would occasionally get it out and play. So I know what you're talking about. I know the excitement and the feeling that you had.
Oh, what a beautiful thing to have still, Michael. My goodness. Great memories.
And the guitar is an incredibly rich sounding guitar. Of course, it's not an electric guitar at all. But the sound is just very rich. It's a very full-bodied sounding guitar. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, so you took lessons, and you said that it came back to be something good for you later on, huh?
It did. And in a way that wasn't quite expected, because I went off to university, and I did well in high school in sciences and math. So majored in math and sciences at university, and it did not go well. It did not go well. So I left university after the first year and registered in Teachers College at the time, and did 1 year at Teachers College and ended up teaching in a tiny town in Northern Ontario. And the love of music continued there by joining the town choir. There was an amazing music teacher in our tiny town. We put on shows, we did concerts all around the area. And my interest in the guitar, which had been put away for a few years while I was doing this, at least 2 years, came back again. And part of my finishing my degree at university, I took summer courses, and in the second summer course, I signed up for a music history course. And oh my goodness, it lit a fire under me like nothing I have ever experienced before. So I went into the professor at one of the professors at the end of that course, and I said, what do I have to do to get into this university as a music major? And so he told me I needed this level of playing and I needed this level of music theory. And I said, okay. And off I went. And it took me 2 years, but I got entrance requirements to the university to get in as a music major. Not expected. It was such a fascinating fire, that was the passion that was lit at that time. I just had to continue.
So what did you have to do? You mentioned the level of playing. What does that mean?
Well, in Canada, they have an examination system through the Royal Conservatory in Toronto. And so I needed to have an exam at the grade 8 level at the time, and along with the theory that was required, music theory that was required for that level. And I had a year and a half of guitar lessons. So it was an accomplishment to find a teacher from, and I was teaching in a tiny town in northern Ontario. The closest teacher who could teach me at that level was an 8-hour drive away.
Wow.
And I had no car. So I called him up and I said, I have to take lessons with you. I need a grade 8 in classical guitar, and what's involved. And so I was teaching public school in this tiny town. So on Friday night, I'd hop on the bus and be on the bus all night, get to the city where the guitar teacher lived, have my lesson that morning, hang around the bus station the rest of the day, and take the bus all night to the back home again on Saturday night. And I did that for 2 years. And after 2 years, I did the exam and got my grade 8 and all the theory required.
So what does it mean, though, from a playing standpoint, to have a grade 8? What did you have to play, or what did you have to show through guitar playing?
It's probably it's a concert level to play pieces that are complicated enough to be able to sit in a theater and play a concert on the classical guitar at the beginning stages of that.
Mm-hmm. But you did it.
I did it. I could not do it. There was no question. It was something I had to do. I had to get in to the university and get a music degree. I'm not. It was a drive that I couldn't explain.
Well, but it was your drive, and that's what really matters. With a lot of commitment to take a bus all night and then do your lessons and then wait for the bus to return. So while you were waiting at the bus station, did you play the guitar?
No. I don't remember I know. I just
You didn't practice.
No, I didn't practice there. I practiced at home. There was a confidence level too, because I was on an extremely accelerated study path to get to that level in 2 years.
Mm-hmm. So he packed a lot into each of your lessons, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. So then you got into the university, and how long were you there?
Yeah, I was there for 3 years because I had already had 1 year of university. I could use those courses as my arts and science options. So I completed the rest of the music degree. It's a 4-year degree in those 3 years. And then it just felt like there was so much more to learn. So I applied for a master's degree at two universities and was accepted at both, one of them in London, Ontario, and the other one in Minneapolis. So I went to Minneapolis and did a 2-year master's degree after that. And then it kind of felt like I had a good grounding. I had such acceleration that it felt like there was a lot of catch up to do also after I got my entrance requirements anyway.
What made you decide to go to Minneapolis as opposed to London, Ontario?
The university in London, Ontario was mostly a music history degree, and I loved music history, but I wanted to learn how to play the guitar better. And Minneapolis, the University of Minnesota there, they had a guitar teacher and an option to focus on performing, which is what I wanted to develop more skill in. So I did that.
Mm-hmm. So was it all classical, or did you branch out into other kinds of music at all?
It was all classical.
Which is probably not too surprising. That'd be the sort of level or orientation that music degrees would take and so on, that they want you to really get the classical part of it and get all the challenges and nuances, because there are probably a lot more from a guitar standpoint, nuances and sophisticated things to learn than going into more of the modern music, which isn't necessarily as much guitar being out in front as the only thing, as with classical music, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. There are certainly skills and nuances in a group and in popular music. However, you're right about with the guitar and being the only performer, at least when I did solo work, there was a lot of skill and nuance for sure.
So when did you graduate with your music degree? What year was that?
It was from Queens, I graduated in 1977, and then from the University of Minnesota in 1979.
Okay. So you are now a master's degree holder in dealing with music, and you play the guitar pretty well. So then what?
Well, I returned to Alberta, Canada, where I got a part-time job at the college there, teaching music, teaching guitar as a start for what to do next, because I wasn't quite sure. And when I taught at Red Deer College for 2 years, and in the meantime met my husband. And we got married, and he immediately got transferred to Houston. So they kind of ended my opportunity to teach at Red Deer College, and we ended up in Houston for about 3.5 years.
Wow. So what was he doing at the time that took you to Houston?
Well, he was in the oil business, patch business, an engineer, and so he was transferred there to do testing on oil field equipment and quality kinds of things. So he's an engineer, so got into that field. And because I didn't have a visa to work in the United States, we had our 2 children there in Houston. We had 2 boys, and I learned how to play another instrument called the lute, which was great fun. So it was filled with kids and lute playing.
Did you do much guitar playing?
I did some with a baby, and then with the second child who came along just before we moved back to Canada. I did some guitar playing, and then also the lute.
Wow. 2 different instruments indeed, though.
Well, I think the lute in part was healing for me, because I had started taking it when we got down there. There was a great lute teacher, and I found someone who would make me a left-handed lute. I play left-handed, so I had to have the instrument specially made. And my father passed away after we were down there for about a year, and I I couldn't play my guitar. I couldn't play it. So what I did is I played the lute and learned more, uh, well, played it more, became more proficient on the lute. And doing that for the next probably 9 to 12 months, Michael, was really healing for my heart. And then I could pick up the guitar again.
Well, so you had 3.5 years in Houston, then you moved back to Canada, back to Alberta.
Uh-huh.
And then what did you do?
Well, we moved into Calgary, Alberta, and after the kids were a little bit older, about a year after we moved here, and we're still in the same house in Calgary, I applied, or I was asked actually, to join the faculty of Mount Royal University. They didn't have any guitar teachers there that specialized in teaching young children. So I ended up there for almost 30 years and teaching all ages from 3 years old up to in their 70s, and really had a very fulfilling career with doing something I really, really loved.
You said you did that for 30 years?
Yeah, and then sound wellness came along, and it was a gradual shift into what I was doing now. And that was a bit of a surprise too. It wasn't something I hadn't expected. So it kind of it started to grow during my last 5 or so years of teaching at the conservatory.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that, if you will. What started that whole thing, and what was the overall eventual cost for the shift?
Oh gosh, it probably started with innocent experiments with teaching adult students. I had a group about 6 or 8 students at the time who wanted to gain more confidence in performing. So I ordered every book on stage fright that I could find and read them all, and picked a whole pile of exercises that we could experiment. I called two coffee shops in town, and organized informal evening performances for everybody, and also art galleries if they wanted music for the opening of an art show. It's another great opportunity. Low pressure for people to just sit and play background music. So we tried out a bunch of the exercises, and we found out that one of the ones that worked the best was imagining a color while we were performing. And the weird thing about it was that every time we did it, at least one person in the audience would get the color. I'll never forget that. Well, I gave one concert in a town during this time. We were exploring near here, and I chose one piece on the program to practice imagining the color with. And this woman came up to me after the concert, and she pointed to that piece on the program. She said, "Sharon, this piece was so beautiful. It reminded me of sitting by the ocean. The color was so blue." And I thought, okay, this is no longer a coincidence. It had happened too many times. So I started really doing my own research and asking questions like, what is it about sound that makes it a carrier for thought and, of course, emotion? And what is it how can it do that? So I got all kinds of books from the library, ordered books, and ended up studying with two of the pioneers in America in sound healing a few years after that. So it's a gradual transition from what I was doing to how the interest in sound healing was really sparked.
Well, love to hear more about that in terms of what it is, what it does, and just your journey about all of that.
Well, sound healing is it's, oh gosh, it's exploding all over the world. And it's still in a way being defined. As far as probably where it sits now is it's a modality. It's related to using the voice or frequency or sound tools like singing bowls or music in order to stimulate a healing response in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a fascinating modality because of the wide variety of tools that can be used in order to stimulate that. And at the time when I was becoming interested in sound healing, there weren't a lot of people teaching it. I did find Jonathan Goldman's his intensive workshops where I attended probably 20 years ago now, and then studied with Tom Kenyon in Seattle, who is a psychotherapist who developed a technique for working with the voice and releasing emotional energy to stimulate that beautiful healing energy of the body. And it was something that fascinated me so much. Having spent a lifetime in sound, I had never really thought how powerful a tool it is to support the body in healing.
So when you talk about sound healing, and I think there's a fair amount today of accepted science that it can help or cause different kinds of reactions in the body, but what does it heal?
Well, I like to call sound food for the nervous system, and like junk food and good food and superfood, that we have junk sound that stimulates the release of stress hormones from the nervous system, which increases the I guess disease load or stress load on the body, which can create disease and discomfort. The good food are things like nature sounds that can help the body just go into the relaxation response that so many people need. There are so many hormones that are released by the brain and the nervous system every time we experience sound and music. And 4 of them at least are immune system boosters. Then there's oxytocin, the bonding hormone. That one, if for those people who love going to hockey games and football games, when everybody's singing, we will rock you in the stands to support their favorite team, that stimulates oxytocin, which bonds all the fans together along with the team. And then there's dopamine and serotonin. There's all kinds of neurotransmitters that are stimulated from sound that then go into the tissues of the body and stimulate that healing response, depending where the intention is focused too.
And when you talk about sound healing, you're talking about real physical healing. It isn't just a mental thing necessarily, but real physical healing.
Yes, I can share a story, Michael,
Please.
of one of our calls where we have monthly calls for our practitioners. And on this one call, the topic was how to come up with a series of tuning fork sounds. We were studying tuning forks in that course, and to support reducing pain or helping something to heal. And Carrie, one of the practitioners, had just had a rotator cuff injury that day. She had been to see her physiotherapist, and she described her pain level as a level 9 out of 10. So very high pain level.
Yeah.
And she was really uncomfortable on the call. So her question was, how can I create which was the topic, how do I create a series of tuning fork sounds? So I said, Carrie, how about we create a series of sounds to reduce the pain in your shoulder? So she recommended 4 different sounds that she felt would help her shoulder reduce pain. And what I did is I pointed the tuning forks. We were all online. So I pointed the tuning forks to her shoulder I pointed them to her image on the Zoom screen. And so we worked with the first one and then the second one. And she said, well, the pain is probably about a level 5 now. When we completed, me just pointing the tuning forks to her image on the Zoom screen, her pain level was down to a two to 3, and it got better over the next couple of days. She went to see her physiotherapist the next day, and she told me in a message after that appointment that her physiotherapist didn't see how that was possible, that the pain can be reduced that much with tuning forks, pointing them at hearing the sound and then pointing them to the person to her shoulder on the screen. It was remarkable and something that surprised me too, because I hadn't had the experience that powerful of using a tool I usually use with a person on their body to help reduce pain or bring more blood flow, those kinds of things. And yet it worked online. It was a fascinating experience.
Well, so that is, it's incredibly fascinating because you did it online. And I'm trying to think of the physics of it a little bit. Pointing your tuning fork to the image, I guess, might to some degree help focus the sound, but her image wasn't where the sound was coming from or starting from. So she had to take something in within herself that also had to help that process, I would think.
Very much so. She was directing the sound to her shoulder.
Right.
And there were a few other on the call at the same time who held the intention of reducing pain, because the goal was to reduce pain.
Right. And so it wasn't just you producing the sound, but the listeners hearing that sound and directing it where they wanted it or knew it had to go. That makes some sense to be able to say, I'm directing the healing energy that I can feel to where I want it to go. Well, that is still pretty amazing, but it makes a little bit more sense. It isn't just the sound as you can imagine, and as we all can imagine, it's also the mental commitment and the mental focusing that goes along with it. I wonder how much different it would have been if she had been in the room with you.
That's a really good question.
Yeah. How would you project that would have gone? Or have you ever had any examples similar where you actually worked with someone in the same room?
Well, I've worked with clients in the same room with tuning forks and the large singing bowls on the body. And it works pretty well the same way from what I've seen. And with the tuning for hip pain, for example, with someone with difficulty in moving a joint or a pain around, either in the joint with where bones are rubbing together, there are always tissues around the joint that are compensating. So the tuning fork would be used in all of the connective tissue around the joint in order to help release the tension in the muscles and then to reduce the pain that way. And then on the other side too, the other side of the body, which often compensates. But the online was so fascinating because it didn't have those elements of having the fork actually on the body and feeling the vibration of that sound going through the muscles and the tissues.
Well, or at least to a much lesser degree, the sound actually approached or hit the body because there was still a speaker and the sound was still there, but she was focusing it, which I'm sure had a lot to do with it as well. And she wanted to make it happen, and she did.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. Well, so when did you actually end up leaving teaching and go full time into sound wellness and then eventually, I assume eventually, but starting the Sound Wellness Institute?
That was a gradual journey too, and it was probably sparked with a phone call that came from out of the blue, Michael. I While I was still teaching at Mount Royal, I had finished my training with Goldman and Tom Kenyon and had returned back to the conservatory, and I got a call from the director of the Integrative Health Institute at the university. And she said, "Sharon, I hear you are into sound therapy." I said, "Yeah, it's been a very kind of my own private research topic for many years by then, and fascinated with it." And she said, "Well, I'd like to have you create a program to using sound therapy as an intervention in a study on stress that we're sponsoring this year." And so I was delighted to take part in that, created the program, and it was so successful working with the people in my group that I created Sound Wellness about a month after that. And that was in 2008 is when I did that. I left the conservatory. Gradually, my hours were becoming less and less with teaching music, and with Sound Wellness was becoming more and more. So in 2016, I finally retired from the conservatory and focused on Sound Wellness exclusively after that.
Wow. Well, it's always exciting and a challenge and an adventure to go off and start to do something really on your own.
There was another complicated, well, I guess another kind of events that were happening in our personal lives at the same time is we went through 8 years. During those 8 years of starting Sound Wellness, of end of life care for both of Ed's parents and then my sister, one after the other. So it was a challenge sometimes to make sure that there were our priority, and then still bringing some energy to Sound Wellness to help it grow. And it's interesting how these things kind of happened together, and we were grateful to be able to support Mom and then Dad and then my sister throughout that journey too.
Were you able to use any of what you learned with Sound Wellness or Sound Healing to help them and work with them at all?
We did, with not quite as much with Mom. She suffered a massive stroke and ended up in extended care. So it was a little harder there. With Dad, Mom was the first to pass away. And when Dad, one of the things that we did with Dad is bring him to one of our courses, and he fell in love with the singing bowls. And so we bought him a crystal bowl. He couldn't play the Tibetan bowls because he was shaky. He was 91 when he came to our course. And so his hand was a bit shaky when he was trying to play the Tibetan bowl. So the stick would clank on the bowl. And so we bought him a crystal bowl in a strong base so it wouldn't tip over. And it has a softer stick and an easier way to make the sound. So he said he played that every day before he went to bed, and it helped him sleep better. So he loved that. And my sister had cancer, and with her, I would bring she had tuning forks with her all the time to help with stimulating her immune system. And then I would come over, especially after chemo, and play the crystal bowls. And that would help her pain level enormously and her discomfort level right after chemo.
Tell me a little bit more about the singing bowls, if you would, please.
Oh, the singing bowls there's two different kinds. There's what are called Tibetan or Himalayan singing bowls, which are metal. And the old bowls and the handmade bowls have a lot of wavering sounds to them and a lot of different frequency levels. And so they are several things they do. All those low wavering sounds when the bowl is on the body helps to release muscle tension. We teach a lot of massage therapists how to use the bowls on the body, because that makes it easier or less work for their hands and their arms to massage tissue. The bowl does a lot of that. And then the crystal bowls have more of a pure sound, and one or two frequencies only, not as many overtones and wavering sounds as the Tibetan bowls do. And crystal works with intention in a more powerful way, I find personally, than the Tibetan bowls do. I have an old Tibetan bowl beside me here, Michael. If you'd like to hear it, I can play it for you.
I would love to, if you don't mind. That would be great. Please.
I'll bring it over. A friend of mine nicknamed this Incredible. It's about 16 inches. It's about 16 inches across, and it could be several hundred years old.
How deep is it?
And has a lot of beautiful sounds. So here's
how deep is the bowl? Or how high is it?
It probably goes down to, I don't have Ed measured it all on his oscilloscope program on the computer. It probably goes down into 20 hertz, 30 hertz.
No, I mean, but physically, you said it's 16 inches across, but how deep is it from top to bottom?
Oh, how deep from top to bottom? Probably about 7-8 inches.
All right.
It has a round bottom, so a little tricky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Go.
You ready for the sound?
Yes, please.
Okay, here it is.
Wow.
Hang on a minute.
Okay.
I need to put on original sound here. There we go. So if I can tap it again, then this will give a more sustained sound, because Zoom has a setting for sound that I didn't have on yet.
Go ahead.
Okay, so here we go. It'll go on and on and on.
It will. So several reactions. One, going back to the person with the sore shoulder, I can see how, even though it was online, the richness of the tone, and you're right, when you changed the Zoom setting, it made all the difference in the world. But how that coming through the speaker could, especially depending on the microphone, but still be something that would be very usable online, because the audio was a very full, rich tone from lows to highs. As you said, Ed, I'm sure measured it with an oscilloscope that gave a spectrum there. But I bet somebody who was in a remote place would get a pretty good range as well. Again, it's always a question of how good the microphone is, but you seem to have a pretty good microphone there.
Yeah, we invested in a good quality microphone because I work with sound online. And one of the things I wasn't quite sure about, Michael, is I started doing sound baths online. Sound bath is an experience with several different bowls and sounds and to a group of people. And I've played with doing them online for about a year before I started doing them more regularly. And it blows me away hearing the response from people and how effective they are online. I've done many of these events in person, so they're powerful in person. And I wasn't sure about online, but after the experience with Carrie and the feedback from the people who've been attending the online sound baths, I'm still in awe for the response it creates in people.
Again, as I think about it, I guess I'm not too amazed, because you've got a good audio source that is collecting the sound, and that's got to have a lot to do with it. Because if you don't have good audio, then you won't produce good audio at the other end, but you clearly do. But still, it is kind of wonderful that you're able to do this virtually as well as work with people in a specific physical location. What how does sound healing actually heal? I know you talked about producing or releasing different kinds of chemical reactions in the body. Is that mainly what it is, or are there other nuances to the whole concept of sound healing?
Well, it stimulates the nervous system to release hormones, neurotransmitters that support the healing of the body's own way of healing. Also, for the large bowls, that using them on the body helps to release muscle tension, which releases emotional energy that's sitting in the muscles and releases the muscles themselves. And I like to also say that sound doesn't really heal by itself. It stimulates the natural healing ability of the body, because the body knows how to do that. And so because sound is felt in every molecule, in every cell, then it stimulates the body in so many different ways and at so many different levels.
And that is kind of what I was getting to. So it's, because it's not a magical thing at all, but it is a part of the whole process. And I think, as I've said, we've known about the concept that people react to sound and have reacted to sounds in various ways for a long time, and we've known it. But it's great to see that it's being used in such a wonderful way to help heal. Will most anyone react to the sound that you just did with that old Tibetan bowl, or do different people react differently to different bowls that I assume have different kinds of sounds?
Absolutely. We all respond to sound. We can't not respond to sound, but we all respond uniquely. And it could be that sound of that bowl, several people wouldn't be able to stand it at all. And one of the things we found with sharing sound and different options you can use to stimulate that healing with groups of people. And one of the things that's so fascinating is that one person will say, "Oh my gosh, that feels so good. I relaxed, my heart beats down. I feel so much better." And the person beside them was ready to leave the room because it grated them so much they couldn't stand the sound. And the person beside them would have, "Well, it was so-so. I didn't like it as much as she did, and I didn't hate it as much as he did." But so it's so unique. And that's the part that's fascinating, is we all respond to sound, and many of us have our own intuitive ways. The music we love to listen to that helps us to feel better is an intuitive way, because we know how we respond to that. And part of branching out into other types of sound is to explore how it makes you feel, because it's different for everybody.
So clearly everyone is sort of, in a sense, differently wired for sound, although we're all wired for sound in one way or another. So as you said, different people are going to react to different bowls or to different techniques or different, I guess it's fair to use the word, technologies that you use to produce sounds. When you played the bowl, did you just tap the bowl with a stick or with something? Is that what you do, or?
Yes, I have a gong mallet that has a felt head on it, and I love to tap the bowl with that. Because when you tap the bowl with the gong mallet, the bowl responds almost like a gong. It plays at so many different frequency ranges, from really low frequencies to high overtones.
Yeah, and also it's easier on the bowl as well. You're not using some hard stick that can damage it over time.
For sure, yes.
Well, tell me, so this kind of brings up something that you just mentioned, so different people like different kinds of musics and so on. And obviously the sounds that we hear can and do in one way or another stimulate our health. We all like different kinds of music. And I think there are some of us, I'm one of them, feels that there are some kinds of music that are just a lot of noise, and they're very loud, and they're very obtrusive, and it's not what I like in music. But I'm assuming that you would say, but for some people, those are okay, or is there some sort of music that really is just kind of not good at all, that it's just too jumbled and doesn't really help, or is that not a fair thing to say?
It's a fair thing to say, Michael, and this one I can share a story about our son, our younger son, and he is a heavy metal fan, and Ed and I are not heavy metal fans.
I'm not either.
And there,
no offense to Frank Zappa, but anyway, go ahead.
I know when he would buy a record in those days, there were records or CDs, I think were just coming out. Anyway, I would always check the words. He always chose bands that had positive messages, fortunately. Some of them do not. Yes. And when he was 16, he went into a clinical depression. And we took him to the doctor. The doctor gave him medication, which he took one of and said, "Mom, I don't like the way I am on this medication. I'm going to throw it all out." So I said, "Okay." And what he did to heal himself of that depression was he would come home from school frustrated or angry or whatever mood he was in. He'd run up to his room, slam the door like a lot of teenagers do, and then he would put on his music, angry music, really loud. And so Ed and I had to plug our ears and let him do that. After a few months, even after just listening to 20 minutes of that, 15 minutes of that, he was feeling better. For him, it helped him to process that out of his system. And with some people, it increases that, which is not a good thing. For Matt, it helped him process that, and it helped to heal him. And so I pause when it comes to making a judgment about a music like that, because for Matt, I know it was very much a part of his healing.
Well, and that's why I asked the question, because different people like different music. And what I was curious about is basically what you said. That doesn't mean that music can't be helpful or be good for them. Although turning some of that heavy metal music very loud must have some effect on the eardrums after a while too.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And that's where safety comes in, because industry says that a sustained sound in the work environment can be no louder than 85 hertz, and a rock concert is about 100 decibels. Thank you. Yes. A rock concert is over 100 decibels usually. And so it is definitely doing damage.
The other side of that, though, is that the people who are playing in the bands are behind the speakers, so they don't get hit by it as much, which is a point that someone made once we were discussing that very thing. How come the people who are playing don't get deaf? And the answer is because they're behind the speakers and they're not getting the blast of the louder sounds. But nevertheless, it's still there. And I have never liked really loud music. I went to a concert in 2019. It was Pentatonics, the vocal group, and
they're amazing.
They are, although I like Straight No Chaser even more, but that's okay. They're a group of 10 guys from Indiana. The problem for me with the Pentatonics concert, and I loved it, but unfortunately I was sitting almost right below a speaker, so it was just louder than I liked, and I wasn't able to move. But they did one song where they turned off all the microphones, and it was exactly as I imagined it. It sounded the same as what they did with the microphones on, except just not nearly as loud, and it to me sounded a lot better. But they're an amazing group. They were absolutely fun to listen to, even though it was loud.
Yes. And one of the things our son did, he joined a couple of bands. He plays electric guitar. So when he was playing in heavy metal bands, he got earplugs made that he would
Oh.
put in his ears so that being around the sound over and over again, the
Hmm.
level of volume wasn't as damaging. So he still uses them if goes to a concert or even goes to the hockey game. We have loud fans here in Calgary for the hockey team, so he'll wear his earplugs at the hockey game.
I went to Daytona, the Daytona Speedway in 2011. The National Federation of the Blind was demonstrating the first vehicle that a blind person could drive, not an autonomous vehicle, but actually it provided the information so a blind person could sit behind the wheel. And they literally drove it around the Daytona Speedway. If you want to see it, it's at www.blinddriverchallenge.org. And Mark Riccobono, who's now the president of the National Federation of the Blind, literally drove around the whole Daytona Speedway, traveling through obstacle courses and other things and passing a vehicle. But after that, and it was about 4 hours before the Rolex 24 race began in January of 2011, when that race began, they had passed out earplugs to us. And I was a little ways away from the racetrack, but my gosh, was it loud. We stayed for 10 minutes and then left because it was just way louder than a lot of us really liked, even with earplugs.
Wow. And how fabulous. I had no idea that a car had been designed to allow a blind person to drive, Michael. What great news.
Well, it's got a ways to go. And I think that the whole concept of autonomous vehicles will help. But Mark drove this around the entire racetrack. He drove through a couple of obstacle courses of barrels. Then there was a van in front of him and threw boxes out of the back, and he had to avoid those. And so a lot of randomness to it. It was really pretty cool. But www.blinddriverchallenge.org. It was really kind of fun to be there and be a part of that. But not when the race started. That was a little noisy for us.
Oh, my. Hmm.
So we all have minds that to one degree or another, but eventually we all get very busy. Our minds get very busy, just involved with every little thing. Are there sounds and ways that we can slow that mind down and get people to step back or just slow down a little bit?
Oh, yes. There's a couple in particular, a couple I could recommend. One of them, it has to do with how the body responds to music and the beat of the music. For example, if you go into the grocery store and there's music always playing, it takes only about 4 to 5 minutes for your heartbeat to match the beat of the music. That's called entrainment. Now, knowing that your heart wants to try to match the beat of the music, then knowing also that a relaxed heartbeat is around 60 beats per minute,
Mm-hmm.
you can make your own playlist of music that will help calm the heart down. And when you calm the heart down, you calm down your breathing and your brainwave state. So it calms the mind down too. In fact, I found out recently, Michael, that YouTube has 60 beat per minute playlists in a whole pile of different musical styles. What a great tool for people to use. It's fabulous.
I'll have to go check that out. I'm assuming though, Matt felt getting to a slower heartbeat and so on somehow came with heavy metal.
No.
Okay.
No, that's the reverse. If you're driving and you need to stimulate the mind, then having music with a lively beat, a faster beat,
Yeah.
can help to keep you more alert. I love lively Latin guitar, and big band dance music is another one of my
Yeah.
favorites for driving. Yeah, I love those.
I'm a great big band fan.
Oh,
Love a
me
lot
too.
of from the 40s and 50s, the swing era and so on, Benny Goodman, but others as well. And even more recent albums when Linda Ronstadt did a couple of big band albums, they were great.
Ah, cool.
So, but I hear what you're saying. Still, it's different for everyone though. But I'm assuming you're saying that it's pretty standard that we, whether it's the grocery store or whatever, our heartbeats typically will match themselves to the beat of different sounds depending on where we are and what we're doing, is that pretty universal?
That's pretty universal. And there are genres of music, applied psychoacoustic music, for one of them, that is based on manipulating or changing the heartbeat, and to create the relaxation response, or the reverse, to keep the body relaxed and then to keep the mind alert.
So people are, I'm sure, asking, and we've sort of alluded to it a number of times. We know there's healthy eating. I'm assuming there's healthy and unhealthy sound, besides it just being too loud, or is that true?
Definitely. They're unhealthy sound, like traffic noise. There's studies, especially from the European Union, showing how people who live near major freeways, it has become a major health problem, because the sound of traffic consistently can raise the heartbeat and also stimulate stress hormones. So that's more like junk sound, unhealthy sound. Healthy sound, the three healthiest sounds actually for the body and the human are wind, water, and birdsong. These are natural sounds that we evolved with. Well, we have them. Water is essential. So when we have water sounds around us, I think the nervous system responds that I'm safe. I can relax. There's water is essential for life. Then we have wind, which helps us get our bearings. And then we have birdsong. And birdsong affects the nervous system in a couple of ways. Birdsong helps us feel safe when the birds are singing, because our ancestors, when the birds stopped singing in the forest, they knew there was danger nearby. Another thing that the birdsong does is it stimulates the brain and the nervous system. High sounds will stimulate the brain, and so it can help keep you alert when you need to get a lot of work done or have a deadline or something like that. So really healthy sounds.
I've enjoyed generally being close to rainstorms, listening to the rainfall, and sometimes thunder if it's not too loud, then it gets to be too explosive a sound. But I've found that rain or gentle storms like that can be very pleasant.
Oh, me too. And waves at the seashore.
Waves, yeah.
Yeah, another one.
Have you ever heard of an album? I think it's by 101 Strings, called One Stormy Night.
I haven't heard of that one. I've heard of a couple of others that they've done with nature sounds in the background of the strings.
Well, One Stormy Night is an album that came about years ago, back when we still had LP discs, right? So before CDs. But somebody in the Los Angeles area recorded a rainstorm, and then they put it to music. They put different songs to different parts of it. And I've always found it to be a very pleasant thing. I actually discovered that it is available when I asked my little Amazon Alexa device to play it. And now I've got some decent speakers that I can project it through. It really sounds pretty good. And I find gentle summer rainstorms like that, even with a little bit of thunder, to be a pleasant thing. I have also been in storms where thunderclaps come right over our house, and they're not quite as fun.
No, they're not. We've had both. Yeah, I love the gentle summer rainstorms too, or the wind blowing through the leaves.
Or the wind blowing through the leaves. We have wind outside right now. My little system tells me it's about 28 miles an hour, but I also have some wind chimes that someone gave me earlier this year or late last year, just after my wife passed, and we put them up. And it's the first time we put wind chimes here at the house, but they're very pleasant. They're very soothing sounding. And so between that and the wind, it also is kind of nice. And Victorville, there's usually a lot of wind. So it's nice to have something that turns it into a little bit more pleasant sound.
Beautiful. I love wind chimes too. I have them on our front porch that I just love the sound of them.
We have this on our our patio. It's on the side of the house, right outside my family room sliding door. So I can hear it most anywhere in the house, especially if one of the windows is open. But I can hear it outside now from my office here. And it's really kind of nice to hear them. Well,
Mm-hmm.
is there some last minute advice or thoughts that you might have for people listening to this and watching it on YouTube?
Well, I think the main advice, Michael, would be to become aware of the sound around you because it's affecting you. The human being is so deeply wired to sound in so many ways, from heartbeat to receptors in the cells to how it shifts your brainwave state, so many different ways, and of course the nervous system. So become aware of the sound around you, the music also, so that you start to get a sense of what feels right to you and what is good food for your nervous system.
And feed your nervous system. It's well worth doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you for being here with us, Sharon. This has been a lot of fun. And I know you have given us some things that we can offer to people listening. Want to tell us about those?
There's two things, Michael, that I love to share. One of them is it's a recording called The Nervous System Balance. And it's about a 4-minute recording. It's 4 different tuning fork sounds that are created, or these series of sounds are created to calm the nervous system, to settle the nervous system, calm down so that you can start your day from a good place. And so it's something I encourage people to download and play with. Find out, because we are all unique, find out if this will work for you and if it helps make your day go a little bit better. The second one is 2 of the 3 nature sounds that we talked about. It's a beautiful woodland creek, and the other one is birdsong. So it's quiet. Play it quietly in the background, allows the body to relax with the sounds of the water, and the birdsong can create relaxation, but also stimulate the mind. I like to have it on when I'm writing, so it keeps the body relaxed and keeps me focused.
And how do people access those?
The nervous system balance is soundwellness.com/balance. And then the woodland song is soundwellness.com/woodland song, all one word.
There you go. Well, and people can go get those and download them and hope they will. And I am going to do it. I like waking up to nice, reasonably quiet sounds in the morning. We used to live up in Northern California in an area of Novato, California called Belmarin Keys, which was designed to look like Venice, Italy. So every house was either on a lagoon or a waterway between lagoons. And especially during the summer, it was quiet outside. You wake up in the morning. Some of us like to sleep later than other people in the whole association. So we got to wake up to the sounds of boats going by our house. We would have the back sliding door in our bedroom open a little bit, and we could hear the boats going by and just all the pleasant sounds of the whole area with the lagoons and all that. And then there were, of course, all the ducks who came up because they thought that we should feed them. That's a different sound, but we loved the pleasant sounds of the boats and the water.
Oh, how beautiful.
So it was great. Well, I want to thank you again for being here. This has been absolutely a joy. You've been a joy, and I really appreciate you coming on to be with us. If people want to reach out to you and learn more about you and maybe explore ways that you can help them and so on, how do they do that?
They could go to soundwellness.com or soundwellnessinstitute.com.
And there's contact information there.
Yes. Phone number, email, all of that.
Great. Well, I really appreciate your time and you taking the opportunity and time to be here. It's now got to be close to dinner time for you, which is a different sound.
Yes, it definitely is. I can hear my husband clunking away upstairs. I think think he's cooking today. So
Well,
thank you so much, Michael.
thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I hope you've enjoyed listening to us out there and that you will take advantage of the gifts and communicate with Sharon. It would be wonderful to do that. I would love to hear from you. Want to hear your thoughts, your comments? Please feel free to email me, michaelhi@accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com, and or go visit our podcast page, www.michaelhingson.com/podcast, where you can find all of our podcast episodes. Wherever you're listening, please give us a 5-star review. We really appreciate those reviews, and thank you very much in advance for doing that. So I hope that this was worth your time. Really enjoy you doing it. And Sharon, I really once again want to thank you for being here, and we really enjoy having you on Unstoppable Mindset.
Thank you, Michael.